Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters. And yes, before we get things started here, I just kind of want to say right out front that this is more than likely, unless something absolutely massive happens, going to be our last video on this subject, at least for the weekend. We're in the holiday now. We're just going to take it, enjoy time with family, enjoy some positivity. Because, yeah, this Scream situation has been absolutely insane to watch over the last 24 hours here. Like, we basically, in real time, have gotten to see a film completely dissolve and reform in a matter of hours. And it's been nuts. There has been so much misinformation, so much speculation, and so much just like info all at once and things changing that it's been a whirlwind to keep up with. And yeah, that's why, justifying myself because I got a lot of shit for a video last week about Terrifier, Scream 7, essentially what we all thought it was going to be, what it was initially teed up to be, has been canceled and burned and completely reformed from what we're looking at now. I have gone through all this afternoon and looked at Deadline articles, Bloody Disgusting articles, every article under the sun, and tried to backdate and get all these resources together to compile what I'm deeming here as the full story up until now. So this is everything that's been going on with Scream 7, where it's at now, and I guess what we can expect for the future. So yeah, Luke, this is kind of insane. You know what I mean? Like the social media landscape has really changed how we we could see behind the curtain in the Wizard of Oz in a sense with this shit.
Yeah, I think a lot of the mystery is gone, and one of the big things that we're obviously living through, as we had put out a video yesterday with a lot of information that wasn't necessarily credited, and then getting new information today. We're seeing this all in real time, where it's like every couple hours, especially with the Scream situation. I mean, you can go ahead and look at those articles where they're being updated, every few hours. It's like, articles being out there and then redacted and something else changing.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Happened to me
Um
like twice since I started this.
so it's like, we're playing catch up and trying to get all these facts in order here. And, I know Dylan has a big sheet there where it's like trying to keep these facts straight because the things are changing every few hours. It's just one of these instances where I think this is probably, at least in most current time here that I can think of, well, us doing the show is, the biggest happening, where it's like this is all changing rapidly, and that is what social media is, where we're getting this information straight from different eyes and ears, and then something else is coming to light, something else changes. So definitely an interesting time in the Scream world.
No, absolutely. And why don't we dive into kind of the official timeline here, everything that I have pulled up. Again, I'm going to flash on excerpts from articles, things like that. And yes, as I'm editing this, I'm going to be checking to make sure that they're still current, still valid, and still run with everything that's going on here. But we start things off. Obviously, everybody knows there was the big leak yesterday of Melissa Barrera. I did that yesterday too, so I apologize. Melissa Barrera getting fired. So that was the thing that started all of this. And then we kind of get into Christopher Landon catching a little bit of heat last night, which kind of surprised me for his tweet. He didn't say much, but it's kind of like it is out of his hands. He's just the director. He's working with people, and I want to circle back to that, but just for time's sake, I'll keep going here. Spyglass then this morning releases a statement essentially denouncing anything that Melissa Barrera had posted, which really then led a lot of people to sit here and say, okay, so it was because of her social media posts. That's why, she was, let go. So that kind of, at least for a little while, confirmed that. And then this is where things go from messy and uncertain to like completely messy. Was once people started circulating the rumor of Jenna Ortega dropping out of Scream. Now, this was, again, the messy situation because you had a lot of people pushing, oh, she's doing it to stand with her fellow actress. She's doing it, because she's upset about Melissa's treatment. And, she could be, but that's from everything that I've compiled, that is not the case. But before I move on, Luke, like, just that in the 4 bullet points I went through, that's a lot within less than 12 hours. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, the Christopher Landon stuff, like, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like that's warranted under any circumstance?
No, it caught me off. It caught me off guard. Certainly, because he wasn't even in the conversation initially in terms of this whole spyglass Melissa Barrera conflict. So for people to come at him and him kind of have to put out a statement, saying he's not responsible, that it's out of his hands. It surprised me a little bit because he wasn't even someone that I felt was going to be under fire for this. He was just kind of a player sitting on the sidelines right now, kind of watching all of this unfold. So that was really surprising to me, just because it wasn't something that I would have called in this whole situation.
Yeah, and he's a big Scream fan. I know everybody was really excited in the horror community when he got the opportunity to work on this film, and he still does have it. But it's like it's definitely a little disheartening to see some people turn on him. I know a lot of the sentiments are, why isn't he standing up for her? And as we get into it, I think we'll kind of start to see a more clear picture of just what's going on here. But we move into the spyglass statement. Yes, of course, with all of the PR going around about this being related to Melissa's post, it was pretty standard stuff, from my opinion. They denounced any anti-Semitic statements that were put out there, and like we said, we're not here to talk about the politics side of this. It is just kind of whatever's going on in the world with that. We're here to talk about the movie and what's going on with that. But they kind of had to at this point, because things got so wrapped up in the politics of the situation that they had to come out and say, yeah, no, we denounce that, we don't want it. But if you read it, they keep it vague again about Melissa. They essentially just say, yeah, we've parted ways. But it's like it's very PR speak. And moving on from that, the rumors for Jenna start, and then we get official confirmation. Literally, I put up a YouTube short earlier today just kind of saying, hey, this is all rumor. Don't take this as fact yet. Wait till an official source comes out. And then, literally, within like an hour later, you have a deadline reporting that, yes, Jenna Ortega is out of the project, but she didn't step out because of Melissa. No, she stepped out due to scheduling conflicts. And we knew about that. We knew that that was something that they had reported months ago, that she was very busy with things like Wednesday and things like Beetlejuice. But there's been all of these stories before the writer's strike, before the actor's strike, where they're talking about moving things like Beetlejuice 2 up the pipeline a little bit. They were able to get them to move their production up a few weeks so that way she'd have time to come back for a smaller role, but she'd still be able to participate. And then that kind of starts getting pulled out of the weeds there, and they really leave it at scheduling conflicts, and it stayed that way for at least a couple hours. And where do you sit with any of that, Luke?
As Jenna Ortega, just became her popularity just became growing and growing. I think I initially saw maybe in I think it was season 2, and then after that, she started popping up everywhere. And primarily, I think her name really blew up when she got attached to that first Scream film there, and kind of really cemented her kind of Scream Queen status in a sense. And then as we saw her schedule getting busier and busier, I know this was a talking point initially that, maybe she was not going to come back, or that role was going to be very limited. For me, looking at the end of Scream 6, if that was what we got with the Carpenter sisters, I think I would have been okay with that. Uh, there's always a little bit more story to tell. You can always find something, but I think that was a fitting end, if we did not see the Carpenter sisters return. So, looking at Jenna Ortega's character and her not being able to come back, when that initially came up, I was like, I wouldn't be mad at it. You can always get something more out of it, but if this was the end, that would be okay with me as well. So for me, looking at it, it wasn't something that I would have 100% called, but it's not nothing that really caught me off guard, I would say.
Yeah, and I think that this series has done a really good job, especially in 6, of kind of teeing up Melissa's character of Sam being more of the center focus. I mean, she's Billy's daughter and everything. Like, yeah, she's, Sam's sister, Jenna Ortega's character is, but at the end of the day, it really comes down to her having the strongest connection to the original Scream series. So it only made sense to me that if she did need to step away, that she would be the one to have the reduced role, and at least for this film. We all kind of said that is like, she could just step away for one film, show up only slightly, and then kind of like how Nev Campbell and Courtney Cox were in Scream 5. But moving on from that, this is when we kind of had a few hours of silence just after that again, where people really. This is when I got really upset with a lot of the fan base and things. And again, I support the people wanting to go out and be supportive of Melissa and thinking that this is a bad call, from Spyglass, and how Spyglass is kind of being a little underhanded here. I'm with that, but then they start talking about boycotting things like Thanksgiving, which is out in theaters right now. Why are we punishing another film, another team, another creative people in this space for something that again is completely unrelated to them? Like, what is going on with that? Like, that just, I saw that going everywhere this evening, and it was just frustrating as hell. And I get it. We've been very vocal about our love for Thanksgiving. I mean, you're wearing a t-shirt for it right now, but like that, it just upset me. And as much shit as I've been giving Spyglass here, I have to put a little bit of that on us horror fans here. Like, that's just, come on, man.
Yeah, I don't know necessarily if that should be bleeding over in any sense where you have a team of creatives that, work really hard on a particular film and it's a well put together film. I even mentioned on our review that, where some of this legacy horror stuff, the Halloween franchise, even the Scream franchise, didn't really hit with me in terms of bringing that slasher formula back to its prominence, whereas Thanksgiving I felt really did. So, I think it would be a travesty for a lot of people to just base it on this one instance and say, you know what, I'm going to not go see Thanksgiving because it's such a well put together film. And like I said, it doesn't really bleed over. There should be more of a contained issue, just keep it in that Scream realm, if so. But, even then, in our video yesterday, I said, the wounds are still fresh. So,
Hmm.
I think as everything changes rapidly, as Dylan said, where yesterday a lot of people were thinking one thing, now today people are thinking another. We don't know what next week's going to look like. So, for people to go into this weekend and to say, you know what, I'm boycotting Thanksgiving, and then for something else to come out next week, and for that to kind of hurt this film at the box office, I don't know necessarily if that would be a good look for horror fans.
Yeah, and it's definitely probably the most disappointed I got during this whole situation thus far, as far as just like the reaction and the fan reaction, because it's like I just don't see that as necessary. Look, if you want to boycott Scream 7, if you want to say, hey, I'm not seeing it because of how they've handled this, it feels underhanded, it feels shady. I'm not going to judge you for that. Okay, like that's on you. I don't think you should rip people down for wanting to go see the film and give it a chance when it initially comes out. But like, again, another property with another team. Like, I mean, Eli Roth has been in this space for decades, and he has finally hit something that isn't just, for his fans, but for the broader horror like scape in general. He's really got something that is resonating with people. And again, really big fan of that film. Really loved it. I could just be a bit more tight-assed and passionate about it, but that's just where I sit with that right now. But why don't we hop into the final segment here, where this is when the Variety article got published, and we're on the Eastern Seaboard, so that was at about 8 o'clock. It was about 4:45, PST, and about 7:45 for us. I call it 8, just because that's when I took notice of it. And this completely details everything that they were able to pull from Spyglass, from Paramount, from everybody's team. This to me very much seems like, because again, in the States, we're about to celebrate a holiday big holiday weekend, extended weekend. So we're losing Thursday and Friday as far as potential work days and news days to a holiday. This just seemed to me like we're getting this information out there. So that way, this is what's on the table. So people don't sit there and just speculate for 4 or 5 days and rev everybody up. It's somewhat damage control. Because yeah, I really think that they thought the Jenna Ortega thing with the scheduling conflicts would smooth it over, but it was shit had already spiraled way too far out of hand. So breaking it down, essentially, what this Variety article gets us to is that uh, Melissa was fired after Jenna Ortega turned down the project. Her schedule was booked, and again, they got it down to where she would have been a cameo, and she said, "No, I'm good." The money wasn't there apparently. She didn't like what she had to what the offer was, and she left. And so they decided to go into a different direction. And I think that from what I've read and what everybody has speculated and said, and reading through the PR speak here, it seems like once her team and everybody got a hold of this and they put it out there, it's once the leakers and the sources and everybody starts twisting their words and throwing things in. Because if you look at it, Melissa had already been catching flack from people on Twitter and on Instagram and stuff for being so openly political, that it seems like that just kind of got caught into this trifecta and pushed out. And now that became the running story, when in all reality, it just looks like deals fell through and they decided, you know what, I'm going to wipe my hands with this. I'm going to throw it off, and that's the end of it. And I'll put her statement up right here so you can read it, but essentially what it says is just that she she's not mentioning anything about Scream. She's not mentioning anything about being fired. She is really just leaning into this whole situation of just, hey, my words have been strewn and misconstrued and thrown out there. All I'm looking for is just for people to be safe on both sides of this insane conflict that she's very passionate about. And she talks about her heritage. She talks about why she wants to stand up and say these things. Again, not getting into the political stuff here. That's her stance. But, that's all she talks about. So, yeah, we get this information from Variety talking about that. And then they say, yes, the same writers are coming back for this. They're coming back to do this, but they're not going to be going off of this script that they've been working off of. No, they're going off of a completely new script. And yeah, this is quite interesting. I mean, this is just something where it's like, all right, so now they've confirmed they have to head into a new direction. And what is that new direction? Well, they're they're trying. It seems like Spyglass has said we are trying to and feel confident that we can get both Nev Campbell and Patrick Dempsey to return to the series and follow a Sidney Prescott centered film. I'm going to stop right there before I get to the last point. I mean, that was a lot, but Luke, I mean, that last point, man, like, do you even see that as a possibility with just how things with Nev Campbell and how things with Spyglass have been?
Yeah, I think so. I think money talks. So if you're
I was
gonna
literally about to say that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if they're gonna throw enough, I think it's gonna be even more than what she was asking for the previous installment, just on principle. But I think when you look at this, it's an interesting dichotomy almost here, where a lot of people are questioning what Scream 7 is gonna look like. Is there even going to be a Scream 7? Is it worth it to have another installment here? But when you look at this, it's Nev Campbell left, in terms of, that last installment. She wasn't able to come to an agreement, which I totally understand. And people who have been through the Scream installments were, what does this look like without Nev Campbell? Is this going to work? But then everyone resonated with Jenna Ortega and Melissa Barrera, and there's always a passing of the torch. I think there is always this kind of it's almost a comfort blanket, where it's like, when we see Halloween, we want to see Jamie Lee Curtis. When we see Nightmare on Elm Street, we want to see Heather Langenkamp. It's a horror fan's comfort blanket. It's a familiarity of, we've seen these actors and actresses in these properties. So When you look at the team that's now, going to be coming back in formulating a script, and hopefully we get Patrick Dempsey, hopefully we get Nev Campbell. It's one of those things where we want those familiar faces in here. We want something that has worked in the past. So we need that playbook again to kind of re-rack everything and get us back onto a course where fans are going to want to see that next installment. So, for me, it's not necessarily surprising. I think for me, again, I mentioned it yesterday, my distaste for the last two films. I think it would be a more interesting take to have Nev Campbell and Patrick Dempsey back, kind of up that age group as to what we're usually seeing with the slashers, certainly in the Scream universe. And see, what we get. But also, if we go in a completely new direction, I'm also intrigued to see what that looks like as well.
Yeah, and one of the things that I wanted to touch on briefly before I get into the final point here is the fact that the writers themselves are coming back, and just kind of the backlash that we've seen online from that is this James Vanderbilt and Guy Busick coming back. Now they did the last two, and I've just been kind of shocked to finally see, I guess, some people go mask off with how they really feel about the writing of these last two, because
Hmm.
we've had a lot of complaints about that. But it seems like most people, on the whole, have been very passive about it. I don't know if it's just because of the energy in the room right now, and that's why, but I've seen a lot of people bashing the hell out of them the last 24 hours here, and finally just saying, no, these movies, they've got some fucking plot holes, and they've got some issues, and they've got some bullshit in them. And I mean, like, again, we've been open about that. If you go back and look at our reviews, we've got a lot of issues with how they tend to wrap things up, but at the end of the day, we're still fans of Scream, and we still find the movies entertaining enough. I think that they're better than some of the other legacy sequels we've had, but they just aren't to that level. And so it's kind of interesting for me to see people now kind of finally turning on them. And it's like, I guess where I'm getting at with this is, I don't know if I buy it necessarily yet, just because it seems like, again, that we've all been turned up to 11 at this point. But it's interesting to watch all of this again just catch fire and go up completely. But the last point here, and then we'll get into final thoughts and wrap this whole thing up, is that yeah, when Jenna and Melissa initially signed on, and this was the big piece here that really, I think, cements all of this, and why I said this is kind of just their final push to shush everything for the weekend, is they were signed on for two films in order. And I think this is completely why Jenna Ortega was never able to strike a deal. And we've know Spyglass's history with Nev Campbell when it comes to money. They were only signed on for 5 and 6. 7 was never an official deal. They've been working on it and working on it since before 6 even came out. And they just could not hit the exact mark with Jenna Ortega as far as payment, as far as how much she's going to be in the film. And yeah, they didn't have a deal in place. They didn't have an obligation. So they said, you know what, it's going to be a lot easier for us to go in this other direction. So we'll just part ways and call it a day. And I think that that's definitely pretty eye opening. And yeah, that's it. Really does give you a little bit more of a sense for just where the studio's head was at. And I'm not sitting here saying that I support it. I think that if anything, it just shows the laziness and the things that I hate about a lot of these legacy properties. And I'm talking Star Wars, I'm talking anything here, when it's like you didn't have a fucking plan. You're literally just going at the seat of your bootstraps. You didn't think to sign these people on for a trilogy. It's like, I'm sorry, I just don't know why we keep doing this. Like, why is this such a trend in Hollywood these days to bring back these big properties and be like, okay, yeah, this one worked out good. Let's now just go one film at a time. It's like you don't even have anything like a contract set in place that says we're tentatively set up for this many films. It's like I don't get it, man.
Well, and for me, it seems almost like a trivial idea, I think, where we say, set it up for three films, why a trilogy? You know what I mean? Where it's like, why not a one and done? Why not two? Why not four? So to kind of over foresee how many films for the closure of a story. If Radio Silence had come to them and it was like, hey, we have this really perfect idea, and it was like, but we need 3 films to do it, then I say, hey, certainly go ahead and you better sign all your actors for those 3 films. But if it's like a one, see what it is and see who's coming back. I totally understand that idea as well. Unless you have that clear vision. But I do think when you're getting into something like a Scream, like a Friday 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, I think there should be a plan in place where, um, you know, it's going to be no secret that horror sells now, and when you put that legacy stuff in the theater and it's on the marquee, people are going to show up. What not whether any returning stars or not, it's already a done deal. They've already sold the ticket. So I think at that point, you don't necessarily need to wait and see. It should be, we want a direction. Pitch us a three film story so that we can get all our fans invested in this, so that they all want to come out to the theater each for each film, and not just kind of, okay, well, that first one didn't hit. Give us a clear story. Don't kind of one and done it, which I think was the issue here, was they didn't know where they were going to go. I don't think they necessarily were planning a trilogy, but it just kind of fell that way, because I think, even depending on how that third film would end, I think fans would have been clamoring to see these characters back for another film, because it's a comfort blanket. You want to see familiar faces in your legacy franchise.
I agree. And I think that yes, maybe I got a little too passionate there by saying that, but I also agree with your point there that it should be at least in the back of their mind set up that when you're dealing with horror franchises like this and horror sells, and when you're dealing with franchises again like Star Wars that are going to make money, or at least at the time they were, you should have it in mind, or at least something in a contract somewhere that says, hey, like, if this does really well and we want to pursue this, we want to keep going, let's immediately come back to the table. Let's set it out. Let's get a game plan out. Let's get these stories finished, or at least write me a treatment. Write me a treatment for 3 films. Let's make the first one and see how it goes. You know
Mm.
what I mean? Like, I don't know why they're not doing that. I don't know why it's so hard, and that's a completely different conversation for another time. But um, yeah, so right now it looks like Scream 7 is now currently still set to come out in 2025, but it will likely be pushed back if this Nev Campbell, Patrick Dempsey business does not go through. So that's really where they're hanging their hat right now and saying, if we work it out with them, we'll keep moving. If not, then that who knows? Who the hell knows where it's going to go? And yeah, I mean, really, the thing that is out there that I just want to touch on very briefly here to go along with this is just that they it's definitely, out of everything that I've talked about today and looked into, the most, like, I guess, not the most concrete confirmed. I can sit here and say with 100% certainty this was in an article, this was this, is that there has apparently been a lot of Scream 7 script leaks for what this film was initially going to be. And to break it down real simply, it was going to be 8 returning cast members: Sam, Tara, Mindy, Chad, Gail, Kirby, Sydney, Mark, and their daughters. It was going to take place in Los Angeles, just like in Scream 3. The film was going to be divided into 2 parts, not 2 films, but 2 concurrent stories, where ghost faces are attacking Sydney and her family, and Sam, Tara, and friends. At some point in the film, both stories would connect, and the reveal of what they were planning was that it was supposed to be Maureen Prescott and Sydney's mother would have been mentioned as the catalyst here, but the reveal was apparently supposed to be Sam and Tara's mom and Stu Macher's sister. I forget her name, and I didn't write it down because I'm an idiot and I forgot, I guess. Those were going to be the killers. That was what has been pushed out. That is what has been said. I've seen multiple people talk about it, but again, no hardcore confirmed source. So we don't have to get into that too deep, but I figured I'd throw it on here since, again, we're deeming this the full story that we've gotten so far. That's all the information. And yeah, Scream 7 as we know it is dead.
Yeah, I mean, that concept, I hope that was some sort of fan fiction, but um that also is in line and on brand for what I've seen the past two films. So, I can't write it
Right?
off 100%. Overall, uncertainty in the Scream universe, for me, I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen next. I want to see some players put in place here, see what that next film's going to shape up to be. Because I'm ready for a fresh take. I want to see some new eyes on this thing. I want to see some fresh faces. But if we get Nev Campbell back and my boy Patrick Dempsey, he's already knocked out of the park with Thanksgiving. So, if we get some familiar faces back like those two, hey, I'm 100% for it. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen as we see people kind of filter in and out of this franchise. I don't think I'll write anything off. I would be surprised if we didn't see Jenna Ortega or Melissa Barrera back at some point down the line. So I want to see what's going to happen and this next take here. So for me, I'll probably say, as it stands right now, depending on what Scream 7 is going to look like, well, come on, it doesn't matter. It's Scream. So I'm going to be in the theater to watch it. Sure, certainly.
Yes, again, time may not heal all wounds, but it definitely creates scabs. And, we can definitely hope for the best on that. And I think that once we really see what happens here and once we actually get some concrete information, that's when everybody can really draw their lines in the sand and where they sit with this. Again, this is just all very minor pieces of news strung together over a 24-hour period. And there's probably going to be a lot more, but that's really where we sit with it. And that's everything that I've gotten. That's everything that I've researched. That's everything that's out there. And I'm doubting that there's going to be any more. Honestly, I hope not, because I've reached my wits end with this. I think that this is a fine enough stopping point. Again, I'm going to link the Variety article in the description there, so you guys can read through it. Again, that is the biggest breakdown of all of the events of the last 24 hours. And it really dives a little bit deeper into the Jenna Ortega situation and just why she could not return and why she couldn't strike that deal. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I feel bad for Marissa Barrera still, or Melissa Barrera. The fact that I can't say her fucking name, yeah, that's why I feel bad. No, Melissa Barrera, my heart still goes out to you as far as just it's an unfortunate situation either way you shake it. Whether she's fired for making some posts on Instagram, standing up for her own beliefs, and again, whatever that may be, but or if she's fired because her co-star, who just so happens to be a bit bigger than her in the sphere, didn't want to come back. Like, that sucks. Like, that's you're part of this huge franchise, whether we like the films or not. That's tough, but she does have that Universal Monsters property. We can hope that that works out. We can hope that that's a big win for her and the Radio Silence team. So I wish her the best. And yeah, I think you're right. I think at some point down the road, could we see both of them come back? Yes, money talks, and yeah, that's really where we're at. It's unfortunate. This is kind of the business side of Hollywood. And we talk a lot about filmmaking, we talk a lot about the art of filmmaking, but the reason I think that this story caught our attention so much, not only with it being a huge story in horror right now, is because this is the reality of the situation. This shit like this happens. And there was a long time when shit like this would happen and we wouldn't hear anything about it. So that's really it. Alrighty. Well, I think I've said my piece. Luke, you got any final words of affirmation for them before we sign off here?
No, not too much. I know mentioned Scream and what that was going to look like, but when you look at Melissa Barrera, I mean, she's cemented as a Scream queen as well. Already in that Universal Monsters project. So I'm also excited to see what she's going to do next. I haven't enjoyed these past two films, so I'm excited to see her in a film that I'll enjoy thoroughly. So I'm excited to see what the future is going to hold for her. She's a very talented actor, and I want to see her in more horror property. So, I'm excited. Again, to see her in something new. I want to see what Scream's going to produce. So, I know it's trying times right now, depending on what news source you're following and what information you have and what's going to come out next week. But, let's try and enjoy the horror space.
Absolutely. And let's keep it let's keep reminding people, and let's say it one more time here, is just whenever shit like this happens, try to wait until you get a bigger, you know, article, bigger studio, bigger somebody who's established a variety, a deadline, a bloody disgusting. They're great. They are always very diligent about their sources and what it is before we start running things through the gamut and start, going up to 11 and screaming and fighting and boycotting, because that didn't help the situation at all. That really created a lot of unnecessary drama in here, and also just created a lot of confusion, a lot of stories. A lot of people still probably think that it was all due to the fact of her all leaving because of these posts, and because of Jenna Ortega leaving because of Melissa Barrera being fired. Like, there's still going to be people out there who believe that, because that's what it was, plastered across Twitter, and that sucks. That's unfortunate. So check your sources, be diligent, and yeah, I mean, let's hope for a brighter future for the Scream franchise going forward. And yeah, guys, that's it. Again, unless something absolutely insane happens, I think we're gonna leave this here. It's that's 2 videos and a short within 24 hours on the story. But this is our big comprehensive breakdown. That's what you get. All right, I'm done. I'm wrapping it up. I'm retired. Scream 7. We're out of here. Thanksgiving tomorrow here in the States. Everybody enjoy it. Have a wonderful weekend. Have a safe weekend. And yeah, that's going to wrap us up here. So until next time, I am Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.